have some info if you want to go.
Good evening. Could you take your seats, please? We're going to call our meeting to order. Welcome to the City of Dublin Architectural Review Board. You can join us either in person here at 555 Perimeter Drive or also access the meeting via the live stream on the city's website. We welcome public participation, including public comments on cases. In order to submit any questions or comments during the meeting, please use the form under the streaming video on the city's website. For those of you who are here in the audience, we're speaking to both you and the audience, the virtual audience. So that's part of our presentation tonight, so that's why we have to go through some of this. Your questions and comments will be relayed to the board by the moderator. Please provide a valid name and address when submitting your comments. Okay, the meeting procedure for tonight. For each case, we'll begin with a staff presentation, followed by the opportunity for the applicant to make a presentation. The board members will then have the opportunity to ask clarifying questions of both the staff and the applicants after each presentation. We'll then open it up to public comments, and then finally the board will deliberate on each case. We start our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if everyone would rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Lori, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Alexander?
Here.
Mr. Cotter?
Here.
Ms. Cram?
Here.
Ms. Cooper?
Here.
Mr. Jewell?
Here.
Thank you. We may adjust our agenda this evening because there are two applications that have been before this board before. So I want to make sure the applicants for 53 North High Street and the applicant for 28 North High Street. Are the applicants for those cases present? Do you have any objections if we move your cases to the front of the agenda? Okay, all right. So board members, before we accept the documents, since the agenda is a part of the documents, I think we need to make a motion to revise our agenda so that we would move 53 North High Street as the first item, and then we'll move 28 North High Street is the second item. And then for three and four, we'll take those in order. So is there a motion to adjust the agenda?
Yeah, I will move to adjust the agenda to put case 3 and 4 to case 1 and 2.
I'll second.
Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, now, since we've modified the documents, is there, let's see, okay. Is there an acceptance of the documents, including our modified documents?
I'll move to accept the documents into the record, including the revised agenda.
I'll second.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes. Approved.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, our procedure for this evening. The review board is responsible for the review of construction, modifications, or alterations to any site in the area subject to architectural review under the provision of Zoning Code Section 153.170. The board has the decision-making responsibility on these cases. Anyone who intends to address the board on any case this evening will be sworn in. Okay. So if those of you who are going to speak on behalf of a case, if you would raise your right hand. Okay. And answer in the affirmative and anybody who thinks they may speak. That way we don't have to do this every time you come up. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, or nothing but the truth in your testimony to this board? Okay, thank you all. All right, we'll move on to the cases. So our first case will be 53 North High Street. It's a minor project review. This application is a request for the replacement of windows for a building on a .22 acre site zoned historic district, historic core. The site is southwest of the intersection of North High Street with North Street. Ms. Holt will be our presenter. Whenever you're ready, Sarah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is indeed 53 North High Street, and it's a request for some window replacements. The site is at the corner of North Street and North High Street. The zoning is historic core, and the building is located right across or just south of the Dublin Library. This building was originally built in 1845 as the Dublin Christian Church. It's on the National Register. And you'll remember back in March of 21, we reviewed a request for replacement windows using a Fibrex product, and that request was tabled. And tonight, based on a great deal of work by the applicants, we are back before you with a revised application. Just for a little bit of context, these are the existing conditions, a view from North High Street and then a view of the modern addition on Darby Street. And then the interior and north sides of the property respectively. The window replacements are only for the historic portion of the property, so 3 sides will be affected. These are just some existing window examples, just to kind of jog your memory a little bit about what we discussed last time. If you'll remember the discussion from back in March, it was determined and talked about at some length that these were not the original windows. Even though they're old, they are not original to the building. The applicant provided a very good PowerPoint summary of the conditions of all of the windows, and that was made available to you in your packet. The proposed windows tonight are specifically made for historic applications. These have the correct proportions and correct materials. They are Marvin Ultimate wood windows clad in aluminum, double hung with a flat sill, 2/2 pattern, and the color that's proposed is the bronze. The trim is proposed to be a shade of beige, and that's yet to be determined due to paint availability problems at the moment. We have a condition of approval that we're recommending to address that. You also received in your packets some very detailed information about the dimensions and the details of the windows themselves. So all of the minor project review criteria have either been met or are not applicable to this case. And staff is recommending approval with one condition, that the applicant work with staff to finalize the selection of a beige color for the window trim prior to any painting activities. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Sarah? No. Okay. Would the applicant like to address the board? Okay. All right. Any questions for the applicant? No. Okay. Have we had any public comment on this?
We have not.
Okay.
I just wanted to thank the applicant. I know I was adamant. I wanted to see more about the windows, and I appreciate all the additional information. Thank you very much. That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
And I think this is a significantly better product than what you proposed last time. And we appreciate that.
Make a motion?
Sure.
Okay, I'll move to approve the minor project review, 53 North High Street, with the one condition as stated.
I'll second.
Mr. Alexander?
I want to ask one question to the applicant. You okay with the condition? Yes. Okay, all right. Sorry. That's good.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mr. Cotter? Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
It's passed. Thank you. All right, our second agenda item tonight will be the Ferry Garden at 28 North High Street. This is a minor project review. This application is a request for site modifications for an open space associated with an existing commercial building on a 0.15 acre site zoned Historic District Historic Core. The site is located southeast of the intersection of Wing Hill Lane with North High Street. Ms. Holt will be our presenter. Looks like you're all set. Okay.
I'm all set. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. This is indeed the Ferry Garden at 28 North High Street. And it is located at the corner of Wing Hill and North High. The zoning is Historic Core. It's a 0.1 acre site. This project was before the board in July of this year as an informal request, and there was a lot of discussion at that time, and the proposal is for a ferry garden in an unused blank area kind of between buildings at this address. And back in July, we talked about the use of faux ivy on the walls. There was a lot of discussion about recommending a mural in lieu of the faux ivy. There was a little bit of discussion about the finial design on the proposed fencing. And at that time, there was general support for a lot coverage waiver based on the situation where the lot already has greater than allowed coverage. So it would really just be kind of a technical issue that we would be cleaning up. Since that application, planning staff has done, and particularly the planning assistants, have done a tremendous amount of work to try to find somebody to do a mural for this space. And we talked to all of the organizations that were mentioned, and we did come up empty-handed. However, the applicant herself has come up with a muralist, so that's what's being proposed tonight. So as a little refresher, this is the space that we're talking about. It's currently vacant. It's about 275 square feet in size, and it's surrounded by concrete block walls, and it's currently just gravel. So you'll remember this graphic, and if you can just use your imagination to remove the ivy on the walls, we're still going to be talking about the 3-foot-tall wrought iron fence, the concrete paver path, the iron tree bench, the string lights, and then the various elements that would be included with the ferry garden. This is the proposed mural that the applicant has presented to us. And again, as a refresher, these are the materials that are being proposed to be used in this space. Then talking about the lot coverage, we did a little bit of a study to show that approximately 91% of the lot is currently covered by paving or buildings, and 85% is the maximum that's allowed in this zone. So looking at the waiver request criteria, we found that all criteria are met for this waiver request. We also found that the minor project review criteria are either not applicable or have been met. So staff is recommending approval of the waiver with no conditions, and also approval of the minor project review with no conditions. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Would the applicant like to come up and address the board? And if you'd identify yourself.
Inez Lammer, owner of Devon's Wine.
Okay, thank you. I had one question. The extent of the mural, is that a motif that's going to repeat at a certain interval? Okay, all right. So it's going to cover all the walls, all the way around. Okay, thank you. Any other question? Do we have any public comments?
No, we have not.
Okay. Any discussion, board members? Is there a motion?
So we're going to do this in two motions. The first motion is to approve the waiver. I move to approve the waiver.
I'll second that.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes?
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes?
Ms. Cooper,
Yes?
Ms. Cram.
And then we need a second motion to approve the minor project.
I'll move to approve the minor project. And I'll second that.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Sarah, just maybe a question, just a more technical. Was there was the variance approved before? So it's too big on the lot now. Was there original variance? Because I don't.
There wasn't. My
We're
understanding,
just cleaning up to make it. full
we are
variance.
just cleaning up, yes, to make sure that everything is in line and perfect according to the code.
All right, now we'll move to our new cases. This is 94 Franklin Street. This is an informal review. This application is a request for construction of an approximately 1,300 square foot addition to the rear of a home on a 0.3 acre site, zoned Historic District, Historic Residential. The site is east of Franklin Street, approximately 275 feet north of the intersection with John Wright Lane. Mr. Hounshell will be our presenter. So, Zach, whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you very much. Well, good evening. This is an application and a request for non-binding feedback for an informal review for 94 Franklin Street. This site is highlighted on your screen. It is located on the east side of Franklin Street and is zoned historic residential. To give you a better understanding of the actual layout of the existing site, you can see there are two vehicular access points, both from Mill Lane and Franklin Street. The Mill Lane access point operates as the access towards the existing garage, and the Franklin Street leads into an asphalt parking area to the rear of the home. There is a slight slope from west to east as you move across the property. Additionally, there are a number of mature trees to the rear of the property. Additionally, 2 crabapple trees to the rear of the home, which would be removed with this proposal, and an additional mature white pine tree to the south of the building, which could potentially be impacted with this proposal. And to give you some context to the surrounding neighbors and the surrounding structures around this property, you can see 3 properties on the west side of Franklin Street and then to the north and south of this property. And this is really just to give you an idea of the type of architecture and massing that are adjacent to the site. So this home was built in 1950 as a minimal traditional home. It is considered recommended contributing to the historic district based on the historic and cultural assessment that was done in 2017. This home does have vinyl siding, a brick chimney, an aluminum sunroom to the rear of the home, which you can see in that north elevation. That would be the rear of the home. And then it does have sash windows with fixed shutters throughout the existing home. This home style was popular in the mid 20th century. These homes typically were 1 to 1.5 stories in height. It had a pitched or gabled roof with a simple roofline design and a small covered front porch. You can see that this site does include a detached garage, which is a detail that could be associated with minimal traditional homes, and these materials are consistent with the current existing home. So shown on the screen is the proposed site plan. Just to give you an understanding, highlighted in blue is the existing footprint of the home and the garage that are already on the site. The applicant is proposing an approximately 1,300 square foot building addition, which is highlighted in kind of a pink red at the center of the screen. This would connect the existing home and the garage, creating an attached garage for this home. Additionally, there's a 501 square foot terrace and 98 square foot deck, which would be at the northeast corner of the addition. The applicant would be removing the existing front driveway off of Franklin Street. This would create one access point to the rear to the existing garage off of Mill Lane. And finally, they would be removing the existing split rail fence that's currently in two sections, both at the north and south sides of the property. So shown on the screen is the west and the south, or are the west and the south elevations of this home. Similarly, to make this a little more clear as to what's existing and what's proposed, the blue on your screen outlines what is existing with the home, and then the red pink is what is being proposed with the building addition. So the west elevation, you can see that the proposal does not exceed the height of the front facade of the home, but it does expand past the footprint of the existing home. To the north, which would be to the left side of that image, it does extend approximately 11 feet for a new sunroom, and then to the south, 6 feet from the footprint of the building. This new addition will match the materials that are on the existing home with vinyl siding and a burgundy thin brick water table. Additionally, the applicant will be replacing and adding new vinyl clad replacement windows. Additionally, on this west elevation, they would be removing the existing black awnings that are located above both the picture window and the double hung window, and we'll be keeping the shutters on that southernmost window, so the right window right of the front entrance. So we did have our consultant that does do our historic architectural consulting within the district, and they were able to review, and they made a few recommendations which were listed in the staff report. One of which for this west elevation was recommending that the addition not be visible and should remain within the footprint, behind the footprint of the existing home. Additionally, the consultant recommends that materials for addition should be consistent with those in the original structure and complementary to the district. The original siding for this home would have been wood siding, not vinyl, and the original windows would likely have been wood sash windows with simple trim. Additionally, the historic design guidelines do recommend that replacement windows should duplicate the appearance of the originals as closely as possible in the number of panes and material. In the south elevation, you'll see that the addition does wrap around the existing home. This would eliminate a portion of the exterior wall of the home, as well as an existing window opening, which would be consistent in terms of look with what's currently shown in blue on that south elevation. You can also see a number of different roof lines with side and front gabled roofs in a variety of slopes. The consultant does recommend that to be consistent with the minimal traditional building style, to minimize the types of roof lines as simple as they can be. And shown are the east and north elevations. A lot of the same materials are used. You'll also see a number of different window types, window sizes, and pane numbers across each portion of this home. Shown on the north elevation, you'll see a shed dormer roof with a black standing seam roof. The remainder of this addition would be a black asphalt roof, which would match the existing home. Additionally here, the same conditions or the same comments would apply in simplifying the roof lines. And an additional comment here would be that the consultant does note that the black standing seam roof would not be appropriate for this type of home. And the materials that are shown on the screen would be what would be proposed with this home for a future application. And finally, to give you some perspective of the massing of this home, you'll see the southwest and the northeast perspectives of what this would look like should it build out. So as this is an informal review, there is no determination that will be made tonight. The staff has developed some questions that are shown on the screen for everyone's consideration. These questions are to help deliberate discussion, but also give guidance to the applicant following tonight so that they may proceed forward with their application with clear and concise feedback from you all. So the 5 conditions that we have written, as well as the 6, which is generally for any additional considerations, is the board supportive of the proposed massing of the building addition? Is the board supportive of the variety of roof lines for a minimal traditional home? Is the board supportive of vinyl siding? Should be noted for that comment, vinyl siding is not considered in the historic district materials, so it would require a waiver should that come forward in the future. Is the board supportive of the removal of 2 existing windows and the variety of window styles on the building addition? And is the board supportive of the removal of mature trees on the site? With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you all would have for staff. Otherwise, our applicant is here to address any questions you may have. Thank you.
I had one question. What is the existing foundation material?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
What is the existing foundation material?
I believe it's on a concrete block.
Concrete block, that's what I thought.
Anybody else have questions for Zach? I have 2. In your presentation, you mentioned vinyl clad window, which suggests a window that is structurally another material like wood, like an Anderson window that has vinyl on the outside, which is something our code permits. But in some of the literature, I saw vinyl windows. Do you know, and maybe the applicant, when they come up, can address that question, because there is a difference. I know you're aware of it, but I just think it's important.
Right, I would look to the applicant to explain further about that choice.
Okay. The second question is, do you know the history of prior approvals for this building? How did vinyl get on there? Essentially, that's my question.
So in our research, it's to my understanding that we don't have any record of an ARB application for this site. So the vinyl would have had to happen either prior to the records that we currently have, which is what it likely would be, or we didn't. It just happened between now and then, and it never received an application. But I would probably defer to the first.
Okay.
In relation to that question, are we sure, do we know what's under the vinyl? Did they cover like clapboard or wood siding, or was it actually aluminum? Because I'm thinking it was probably originally aluminum siding if it was 1950.
Right. I know in our historic and cultural assessment, it doesn't identify what that original siding was. In the staff report, I believe we had mentioned that the consultant stated that it would be wood, there would be wood siding underneath. So staff does not
We don't know what's
fully
under.
know. Right.
Thanks.
Okay. Would the applicant or someone representing the applicant like to come up and address the board? State name and your address, please.
Would you also be able to turn on your mic as well? There should be a button in front of you.
Okay. Would you like to make a brief presentation, or you just...
Nothing really further to say beyond Zach. Just here to answer any questions and clarify anything that we need to, so we have some direction moving forward.
All right.
They are vinyl windows, by the way.
They're vinyl windows.
Vinyl,
Okay.
not vinyl clad.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right.
Hey, Zach, do we have a picture of the south side of that original, the current home? So I thought there was a tree there too.
There's a big pine tree. But it's kind of front.
Yeah, more front up to the left, because those crab apples definitely are. So I'm seeing something off to the right there, the back of the house there. Didn't look like a pine. Just
There is a large white pine. It is substantial. To the very left of the south elevation photo, you can just see some of the branches hanging down.
got it.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's We went out and took a look at the various trees out there, and there was some concern that with the elevation pushing into the root zone of that tree.
And it looks like everything on the east side is safe.
Right.
Okay.
Have we had any public comment on this? Have we heard from the neighbors about this?
We have not.
Okay. Okay. So then it's time for us to deliberate.
Maybe just maybe one question. Just as you think about, I mean, because one of the guiding principles is about the house is trying to keep its original character that has with the minimalistic design. And as you think about how you've expanded, let's say, north and south of that, I mean, I think it says I think the applicant statement says you intervene to the existing house minimally or slightly, I forget what it said. But why do you think that's a minimal change to the front of the house? That would be a minimalist, let's say a minimalist, let's say a style of being minimalistic in thinking that you've added, I think, 11 feet on one side and 3 on the other, something like that. So just your thought about why that doesn't change the character.
Well, we were trying to protect, obviously, the front section of the house, what you see from the street, and the other extensions happen further to the rear from the front. So I understand the comments of the overlapping forms, and but again, trying to work the spaces through that we're trying to satisfy the client, and we're trying to push all those things as far back behind the house as possible, even though they do extend out a little bit on each side.
So, I mean, in your
We're
mind,
trying to push that back farther, that's all.
okay, sure, you're
guess
trying to
to
take
answer
those
your question.
extensions and push them more off the front building and push it toward the,
Keep them to the rear of the main structure, that was the goal.
okay,
Toward the rear.
okay.
I have a couple of questions as well. One of the questions I had was how does, and this kind of ties into the question about the foundation. I believe that's the south side, and then the east side of the building, on the east side, there's a egress into like a basement or a cellar.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if you look at the south elevation, there's definitely slope down and to the back where the garage is. So
Yes.
can you kind of explain how this addition is getting incorporated? Is that why the windows are being wiped out on that one side of the house there on the south side where the addition starts?
So to answer that, the first floor level runs, obviously from the front of the house, we're maintaining that line back into the addition. But because the grade's dropping, we introduce a short set of stairs that gets us down. You can see on the illustration there, as the grade's tapering down toward the garage, that those stairs then drop down, and get us down to that garage hyphen level.
So inside the structure is where you're proposing that the steps will step down?
Yes. Zach, are there any floor plans included in the presentation or
I can pull some up.
accessible? That might help illustrate a little bit better how the floor plan is working and making its way toward the rear and down, because that whole egress foundation walk down area will be eliminated, and there'll be a new crawl space that gets built in that area to extend back to the garage.
And do you anticipate having to disturb the large pine on the south side of the house?
No, that's further up toward the front corner of the home, and
Of the existing structure?
the existing up at the front of the house. It's up at that front corner by that guest room that's on the screen there. The only two trees we anticipate disturbing are the 2 crab apples that are between the house and the garage. So in that illustration, you can see the set of stairs that's next to the laundry room. Those get us from the great room floor, first floor level, down to the hyphen there.
So is the addition on the south side, the bathroom is as it is existing, correct?
The master bath?
Yes.
No.
Okay, so that's an add-on right there. That's where the add-on begins. Okay.
Essentially from the back side of the island in the kitchen, that's the back of the existing home.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Sean's comment is the only one that's, well, if we talk about massing, and I think Sean's comment is coming right from the massing question, and that's a question that the consultant asked as well. And because there's a common strategy that we see in the district for adding to homes that deals with, because you're adding a tremendous amount of square footage to this house. So the question becomes, how do you do that in a way that doesn't overwhelm the house? And the consultant's reaction is basically it's overwhelming the house because it's coming forward and engaging the sides of the house. So the strategy that you see not just here in the district, but in other historic areas, is you keep that addition narrower. And what that does is then that provides three sides of visibility. So the corners that help define the original structure, and that's really the goal. How does your addition respect and allow the original structure to be visible so that the corners are visible? And you have enough square footage, your lot, the floor plan's a bit deceptive because you have so much space beyond the garage that, granted, it would require some reconfiguration, but the space, the terrace, could be shifted back adjacent to the garage, and you still have plenty of room for all the square footage. And that does a couple things too. One, preserves that volume of the original house, reduces the apparent massing from the street, impacts the tree less. Also, the one side is pretty close to your neighbors. I mean, even though it doesn't require variance for the setback, it's a pretty big mass next to the neighbor's residence. So,
To the south?
yeah, I believe it's, I'm not sure which side, but when I drove by, I was hoping we'd have a site plan with the neighboring houses on there. But you know, when you start thinking about this wall that's going to be on there, and I look at the property to the south, and they have that corner of their house right there, and you're coming forward from the corner of your house, and those trees are gone too. So that's really a big change for those people. So I had some concerns about the massing as well. I think Sean expressed it in a different way, but that was clearly expressed in the consultant's report too.
And I'd agree. I know that's not what you're going to want to hear, but I would say don't touch the north-south and front. Put your building on the rear. That way we see the original house. Our guidance is it needs to be subordinate to, secondary to the original house. So we need to be able to see that original house. So I think there's
My
just,
understanding correctly that the addition the complete addition has to fall within the north and south edges of the main house?
yes.
Even though we start inside the corners?
Yeah, my suggestion, yes, you need to inset your addition on the rear side of the house. The only part of the original house you're impacting would be the rear of the house. And I would keep it simple, just do a perpendicular gabled addition on the back. I mean,
If they did that, they might have to come up, because you'd probably have to hip it, because the gable at the width of this.
yeah, if you want to get
will-
some height, yeah, if you need to get some height. And I'm fine with, you can modify your garage, get a little, if you need extra space somewhere, you can.
But Amy's suggestion, you could bring it in, match the pitch, if you gabled it, you could have a flat spot up top so that, or if you hipped it, you could have a flat spot up top. So then the mass, here again, you're keeping it below the existing ridge and it's not this big looming. Because I can understand what you're trying to do with that roof line. You're trying to keep those roof lines, even though your footprint's so big, you're trying to keep those roof lines below the house. And
Right.
we appreciate that sentiment. I think it's maybe creating some other problems for you.
But yeah, just don't wrap the corners and hide and close off existing windows. You lose the old house, the original house.
That makes sense.
That was probably my first, and I didn't maybe phrase it as well as, but for
Yeah,
me, it
sure.
should stay inside and not hook onto the
But
side.
again, as we step in and move back, we cannot pop back out the sides
I mean, for me,
beyond.
the one on the north side, the north side, the sunroom.
Just trying to see if we have any latitude there or
Well,
not.
use the north and south for your patio or things like that, not building and structure. So if you're standing on Franklin Street, you're looking, or what street are we even on? Franklin Street. Okay. You're standing up right and you're looking at it, you see the old Cape Cod house. Like, yep, it clearly is 1950, post-World War II Cape Cod, and with an addition on the rear.
First of all, we're not going to tell you exactly what to do tonight because you need to adjust the floor plan. So there are a lot of things. We're making suggestions. So, and you can come back multiple times. So you shouldn't feel like everybody here is going to agree on one item and you have to do that. Because I would be okay if further back, because I think, the gables that are facing the south, you're trying to break that mass up. I understand that because it's a long wall. You're trying to break that up. If you bumped beyond the face of the existing house, but it was further back, it was further back from the front corners, I wouldn't be.
Yeah, that might work.
For me,
I
would say
wouldn't-
the 11 foot on the north for me is too much and it sticks out into the house along. If it goes back farther,
It's the
off the
covering,
house,
I think
covering the house.
it's the covering, it's the wrapping and covering the old
Correct.
windows.
Correct.
That's
And I'm not
what's-
looking for the exact answer. I'm trying to
well-
establish some guidelines that we can redesign to. So that's helpful to know that we can, if we have to project out further back, it's an opportunity. As long as it's done.
And as far as I'm
carefully.
concerned, you can change the garage however you want. Like, you don't have to keep the garage footprint. So just let you know, you can, from my opinion,
And you've got a lot of depth on that property.
yeah.
Pardon?
You've got a lot of depth on that property.
Sure. Yeah, we're trying to maintain the garage and not rebuild that or affect it.
I think we've addressed the massing and we've addressed the roof lines.
I don't know if windows fit in that part too. I don't know.
Well, I think the next one
question?
is vinyl, the vinyl siding, but we can talk about, since that's a material issue, we can also talk about the windows in that as well. So feelings about the siding.
I don't support vinyl siding. Now, it's very likely that it originally had aluminum siding. I mean, aluminum siding became very popular on Cape Cods in the 40s. So it was either wood or aluminum, but definitely not vinyl, so I can't go vinyl.
Even though
agree.
there's vinyl on it now.
Yeah.
Right.
We're not sure at what point that happened.
I don't want to set a precedent of allowing vinyl siding in the historic district. It's there, you can leave it on. You don't have to change it if you don't want, but you can't add new vinyl.
Yeah, Marty, this is just because you asked the question, this is the first time, and since I'm the oldest member in a lot of ways on board. Vinyl. Okay, vinyl siding has never come up as a request to use. And we specifically don't allow it in our code. So that's the dilemma. And sometimes, just for the owners, because I have a feeling the owners are here too. In historic districts, and the way that our standards evolve from the Secretary of Interior standards, and those standards emphasize differentiate, and Amy can correct me or supplement this, they emphasize differentiating the additions from the existing house. So in some suburban areas, the feeling is just match everything. Match everything. It exists, so you match it. But that's not, particularly when you have a building that's been designated as a contributing structure. So that's why we're saying the vinyl is not a good choice here. It needs to be one of the other choices that our code would permit. And it does permit some synthetics. So it doesn't have to be real wood. There are some synthetics that we've.
If they don't. However, we are not requiring them to remove vinyl.
No, you don't have to change what's there. You've got vinyl, it's on there.
Just,
We
Right.
can't add new vinyl siding.
yep.
Starting acceptable?
Yeah.
Or not harder?
Yep.
Or back? Is that what I understood?
Well, we have,
Honestly, it just wouldn't fit with that style of house. That style of house would have had horizontal wood siding. It might have had wood, like shingle shake siding, or it could have had aluminum siding. It never would have had that other kind. So definitely not on the core of the house. If maybe you had a section towards the rear or something, or the garage, you were going to reside that or something.
it's been used in hyphens and other places.
Yeah.
It's been,
Yeah.
exactly, to give some depth or some distinction between two structures, yeah.
You're speaking about board and batten?
That one I'm speaking
Yeah.
about board and batten specifically.
Yes.
Okay, so we've talked about, let's talk a little bit about the windows.
So they were so we say they're vinyl, just,
They're probably vinyl replacement windows now, because,
yep.
but so again, you can keep your vinyl replacement windows in your existing building, but in your new additions, you cannot use vinyl replacement windows, because that's not an acceptable product for the district. So you would have to get an acceptable window for your additions, but we can't make you change what's there now.
Does anybody have any feelings about the consultant talked about the different types of, different sizes?
I mean, it'd be interesting to see, I mean, I don't know if that's what it'll look like at the end, but you have 2/2. I think you have quite a different variety of window patterns in there. I don't know if that's on purpose or if that you were doing that for a certain, is that a?
Riding on the existing home already, our goal was to maintain the same proportion of the grill areas, whether that meant it was 4/4 or 6/6. The sunroom windows, those are showing 9/9.
Yeah.
So again, our goal was to try to keep the proportion of the lights similar, not just a blanket 4/4 or 6/6 arrangement.
And the other advantage of not wrapping your addition, so it will clearly look like an addition, which means the materials don't have to exactly match the front of your house, which we don't really want. Like, we want it to look like an addition. So my suggestion is pick a window you like, and, don't use 5 different kinds of windows. Just narrow it down. Like, if you like 4/4, if you like 6/6, that's fine. I wouldn't recommend 2/2 because that was not used after 1950, like after this. That's too early of a window style that it would seem off. But any multi-light that match top and bottom would be very common.
Well, and you're not far off from creating more continuity even with the windows you've selected, because if you look at the north elevation of the sunroom and the width of those windows, and you use something similar in the the east elevation of the great room, but when you wrap the corner, and I'm sure it's because of the space, but when you wrap the corner, you change the window width, and then to me, there's just one opportunity, and it probably helps the interior too. You use the same window, same size window around the room, provides more continuity on the exterior. So even using the same window size, you can arrange them different ways. So you can still get variation, but the same size will provide, I think, a little bit more continuity that the consultant's report is looking for. It's not on our list, but since we're talking about materials, the consultant's report mentions a metal roof.
Yeah, a metal roof just would never have been used on this era of house, on a 1950s house. Oh, it's odd. I guess what I'm thinking is it's odd to make your addition look older than the main house. if that makes sense. Like, if you use 2/2 windows and standing seam metal, you're making your house look like it was built in 1910 or 1920 when your house was built in 1950. So it would have asphalt shingles. I mean, that's just what it would have had.
Almost introduce the metal as an accent material, similar like you would on a front porch or something like that. So perhaps it's the mass of the roof that's wrong, or maybe it's
And
Turn your mic on as well, sorry.
it would just depend where it is, I guess. I mean,
sorry. Is it on again? Okay, there we go.
And I think maybe if you even lowered the slope, because you could put it on half that slope. So even if you lowered the slope, then it's going to look like something a little bit different and more like a shed. But I'm not 100%.
Do you know if most of the objection with the sunroom was the fact that it was 11 feet beyond the north edge, more so than it had a shed roof on it or that it had metal?
yeah.
I would say.
It was the location. If you put that sunroom on the very rear of the house, like facing the garage, I don't think we'd have a problem with it.
Yep, I think that would be your fix.
So it's a combination of factors with
Yeah.
that space.
Yeah, so I think that's just an item, like, I think we just need to see it in context.
If you
far
only
as
see it
I'm
from the back, it probably makes much less
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah,
What was
Only
that?
see- If you only see the metal roof from the back.
Oh, from the
and not
back.
And not see that from the front. I
Okay.
mean, that would change the context of how it looks for me.
Gotcha.
I'm not so opposed.
And one other comment about materials while we're on it is just when you have your addition, make sure it all has the same foundation. Like, because where you're going to meet it up to your building, like if you want to use fake brick as your foundation, that's fine. Just make sure you use, it's all brick, that's what we see.
Now, does that mean we need to add it to the,
No, don't touch
Not
the
the
original
original
part. No,
house.
yeah, what I'm saying is make it look like it was built all at one time. Sometimes we see people come in and make one little section, one stone, and over here brick. So I just wanted to let you,
makes
like,
Right.
make it look like you're building one addition at one time, later in time frame than 1950.
okay.
Have we addressed the issue of removing the window? Because we've talked about moving it back so those corner windows are still visible.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Yes.
I think there's one window on the rear of the building. I'm okay if that ends up in the long run getting impacted. But I don't advocate changing any of the fenestration pattern on your north, south, and front.
Correct. Because the addition will attach to the rear. so
Right, you're
we're
going to
bound
touch the
lose.
rear, and I'm okay, like, if we change the fenestration pattern on any side, the rear would be okay. Because we're not going to see that from the front of the street, from the,
Correct.
How do we feel about the removal of the trees?
I thought they were just crabapple trees, right?
yeah, I don't think they were in, they were in pretty bad shape.
Kind of scrub.
No,
Yeah.
over matured.
And just to provide some background, we had staff that went out and addressed those crab apples and determined that they were in poor shape. I think this was more if that large mature tree on the south side of the building was going to be affected, would the board want to see that preserved, or would they be okay if it were to be affected? That's really where this,
Yeah,
And it's pretty far away from, now, if you move everything back, it's going to be pretty far away from the,
wrapping
yeah.
corner of the house, I don't think you're going to be in the root zone of the
Yeah.
pine tree.
We were potentially outside the root line,
Even before,
Yeah.
I don't think, it's-
yeah.
if we move everything to the rear.
they have a pretty small root base, I think we'll be all right on the pine.
I did have a question about crab apples, if I may.
Mike as well. Mike as well. Sorry, I hate to be that person.
Do I need to hold this down the whole time?
No.
I think it goes off after a while, because I keep noticing mine go off.
Okay. So when we measure the trees, according to the correct method, the 3.5 feet off the ground, we arrived at about 42 inches of diameter, even though the trees themselves are only 12 and 8 inches diameter at the trunk. Is there any leeway as far as the number of inches that needs replaced can be modified?
Go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you. I actually went out with one of our landscape architects to measure those trees. And if I'm remembering correctly, first of all, none of them were in good health. So that's the first thing to remember. The second thing to remember is that there's no replacement requirements for residential. So really the only thing that we determined from our site visit was that white pine really ought not to be impacted. And we've discussed that.
So she doesn't,
Okay. I was under the understanding that anything we pulled out had to be replaced in some fashion.
Not for residential.
Okay.
so we're good with you cutting them.
Okay.
With the crab apple trees.
Do you, the owners, have any questions, additional questions for us?
Shannon?
Hi, Shannon Crone, 94 Franklin. I'm new to this process. I'm moving from Michigan effective next week. I'm kind of homeless in the meantime. So I know you said we can come back multiple times, but I'd really love to expedite the process. So I'm looking for some advice. I'm taking in everything you're saying, and I'm certainly going to work with the teams that we're applying it. But what aren't you telling us, or what else can you tell us that we should take into consideration so that in December I can get approval to start the house?
Well, I can summarize. The reason I made that comment is your design professionals have made put together an extremely thorough presentation. And sometimes to get feedback, you don't need that thorough presentation. So so sometimes people do bring sketches and things and see how we will react before they go to that kind of effort and expense. But you don't have to bring sketches if you want to do another finished proposal. So let me summarize our comments, and maybe and if this doesn't answer some of the questions you have, ask it again, and we'll be more specific. So when we talked about the massing, we all felt that the massing of the addition needed to be brought in. Sure. So that was at least where it touches the house, where it's narrower than the width of the house. Okay, and massing included dealing with simplifying the roof line. So we all felt that there's a little too much going on that roof line, which tends to overwhelm, because it's so busy, it tends to overwhelm the original house.
May I ask a question on that? So you, Ms. Cram had mentioned that you don't care if we do something with the garage. Does that mean we can go up and out on the garage? And
I'm just saying, I threw that out there as a possibility because you have so many spaces, right? You're trying to fit in your interior, and let's say you want an exercise room or something like that, and you can't figure out how to fit it in that footprint because we're telling you, narrow it. And we're also saying you can't go higher than the original roof line, right? So if you still need to get that square footage, I was just throwing it out there that I really don't care what you do to that garage.
okay.
Like, you could completely redesign that garage and make it like a half story, get an extra half story, put as long as it's, again, not overwhelming and we're not seeing the roof of the garage from Franklin Street. But I was just throwing that out there as an idea of you could get more space out of that if you changed the width of the garage and changed that wall.
Okay.
I don't consider that impacting the look of the house in general. So that was just giving you more options to find that square footage somewhere.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
And then on the materials, I think we've made it clear that the vinyl siding on the addition is not going to be approved. Also with vinyl windows. And I think long-term, you would regret, with the investment you're going to have, putting vinyl windows in a house like this. The metal roof, I think there's some give and take. I don't think that would necessarily
Okay.
lead to the project being not approved. And I think that's most of the.
Yeah, I think the key in our criteria is that additions should be subordinate to your original house. In your original house, you have a very small footprint. So you're going to have to get very creative on how to make it look subordinate to. It's not a numbers thing. It's not you can only do X amount of square foot. It's just, what does it look like overall?
Okay.
I think it bears repeating too about if we could go back to the slide that showed the bump outs for the sunroom. I think that bears repeating too, because that would also need to be subordinate to the original structure.
Yeah, so ideally, whatever you bring back to us, that, what is that, west elevation should just be the blue part.
Okay.
We shouldn't be seeing any of your additions sticking out from that view. Everything should be in the rear. How you make that work, that's up to the architect to figure out.
Unless it's further rear, like you guys.
It's possible, yes.
Yeah.
If it's back further on the lot and you see a little, like a screened porch or something, your sunroom out a little, that might be,
That's right. We did
it's
qualify.
removed. It's not touching those original 3 sides.
Do it carefully.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just looking at the elevation from the south, it does look like you could put a second story on the garage and not
Yeah.
be above your
You could
roof
easily
line.
turn that garage into a 1.5-story building and we still wouldn't see it because of the slope.
Right. Okay.
Anything else? Applicants, do you have any more questions for us? Okay. All right. Thank you. And the staff, as you know, the staff's always available, so as you work through it.
Okay. Jim, do you want to show me? Yeah. So, I mean, our goal is to get this redesigned and resubmitted for the December meeting so that we can get an approval so they can start construction. So that's a minor project review, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Is that feasible with timeframes?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
'Cause it's 2 weeks from today, correct? The submittal date for the December 15th meeting?
I believe that's about right. For 6 weeks, yeah.
I would assume so,
Yeah,
yes.
that sounds about right. 6 weeks in advance of that meeting.
And we can certainly work on that following this meeting. We can follow up in the coming days and talk about deadlines and meeting dates.
Yeah, I just want to be really clear what we need in the package so that we obviously don't spend time on things you don't need, but making sure we cover what you do need so we can get this back in front of you and get it approved.
We can certainly provide you with that.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right.
Thank you all. Okay. Okay. All right, moving on. Our next case is 3638 North High Street. This is an informal review. The application is a request for the redevelopment of 2 existing buildings and a parking lot into an approximately 5,400 square foot mixed-use building and a 3,200 square foot 2-unit residential building. The .25 acre lot is zoned Historic District, Historic Core, and is located northeast of the intersection of North High Street with Wing Hill Lane. Mr. Ridge will be our presenter. Chase, whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you. So good evening. This is a request for informal review providing non-binding feedback on the proposed redevelopment of the site located at 36 to 38 North High Street in the Historic District. The quarter-acre site is highlighted in yellow on your screen. It is located northeast of the intersection of North High Street with Wing Hill and is zoned Historic District, Historic Core. The zoomed-in version of the same aerial provides a bit of context to the existing conditions of the site. The existing building, built in 1960, is located in the western half of the site with parking to the rear, or the eastern half of the site. And outlined in blue is the existing historic stone wall and privy. These photos provide a bit of context to the existing conditions of the site. Again, the building was built in 1960 and is a vernacular building with 2 distinct sections. So you begin to see that in the top photos on your screen. The building is recommended contributing as well, according to the Historic and Cultural Assessment. The applicant has submitted a structural analysis and photos documenting shifting of the building for the board's consideration this evening. And additionally, approval of a demolition request will be required should this move forward in a formal capacity. And finally, the bottom photo, you begin to see the existing stone wall with a bit more clarity. So this photo is an up-close photo of the stone wall and privy. In May of 2021, so May of this year, Preservation Designs provided an assessment of the stone wall to assess if the wall and privy possess any historic or cultural value. Ultimately, that assessment concluded that the wall and privy, without significant modification, meets historic integrity markers for location, design, setting, workmanship, and material, and that the wall contributes to the site and to Dublin. Additionally, the historic Dublin design guidelines suggest that original walls be maintained, retained, and not modified. Degraded walls should be rehabilitated without compromising the integrity and character, and replacement of historic walls with new walls is discouraged. With this application and proposal this evening, the applicant is proposing to retain the stone wall and privy. As mentioned, demolition would be required to facilitate redevelopment of the site as proposed this evening. And again, the existing building is a recommended contributing structure. 5 of 7 of the integrity indicators are positive, with 2 of them being negative. Given the status as a recommended contributing structure, the applicant will be required to demonstrate by credible evidence that the owner will suffer economic hardship if the request to demolish is not granted. So this evening, the applicant has provided some preliminary information for the board's consideration. Additionally, I have the demolition criteria available at the end of this presentation, should you all find that helpful in the discussion. And then again, the applicant is intending to save the stone wall and privy on the site. So before you is the proposed site plan. Aside from salvaging the stone wall and privy, the applicant is proposing the construction of a 2-story mixed-use building of approximately 5,400 square feet. This would front North High Street and is located on the left side of your screen. Additionally, the applicant is proposing a 2-story, 2-unit townhouse building fronting North Blacksmith Lane. 11 parking spaces are provided, 9 of those, or rather 7 of those centrally on the site, 2 in the northeast corner of the site, and then 2 on-street parking spaces are provided. With the proposed mix of uses, 20 to 38 parking spaces are required depending on that final mix of uses. So regardless, as proposed this evening, approval of a parking plan will be required. Should the board be supportive of the mix of uses and largely the proposal, a parking plan would be required with a future submittal. Lot coverage numbers are not provided. In the historic district, historic core zoning district, 85% lot coverage is permitted. So with a future submittal, those numbers will be required. The applicant has also provided a number of renderings. So this first one is as viewed from the south, or Wing Hill Lane. You'll notice the applicant is proposing, again, 2 structures, one fronting North High Street and one fronting North Blacksmith Lane. Both of these are full 2 stories in height. And you can begin to see on the left-hand side of your screen here, the building fronting North High Street contains a porch and balcony on the 2nd floor. This is as viewed from the west or from North High Street. Again, full 2 stories in height. Here you can more clearly see that front porch element. And you'll notice that the applicant is proposing 2 primary exterior materials. One appears to be a vertical siding, and the other, on the other half of the building, is a stone material. Another view from the southwest corner, again from North High Street. And from the northwest corner, again on North High Street. So with that, and this being an informal review, there are a number of discussion questions to help facilitate the discussion. I won't read all of those out, but I'll leave these up for your consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have, and the applicant is also in attendance this evening. Thank you.
Any initial questions for Chase? I'm sure we'll have more as we go through this. Okay. Would the applicant or the applicant's representative like to address the board? Come on up. Come on up.
Good evening. My name is Tim Lai, and I'm the architect for the projects. Do I need to tell you the address, my office? It's 401 West Town Street, Columbus, 43215.
Is there anything you'd like to add, or does that?
Well, I think the main thing that we that would like to get out of this presentation today is to really, I know there's informal kind of application, but we do want to get some feedback from the commission about the possibility of to consider, our proposal to replace the existing, structure with the opportunity to create a in our view, an improvement over what is there right now. So I know that there's some supplemental information that was not presented at the previous presentation about the demolition application, about some of the economic things that our owner would be more than happy to talk about if you guys are interested to hear.
Sure. Yeah, I think the demolition is the first big question.
So just to let you know, we did receive this applicant's statement of demolition in the packet. So we did all
read
get to, yeah, we read the numbers of the improvements and stuff, just to let you know.
I see.
Okay.
I see.
So there's no information beyond that.
I see. Okay.
That's correct.
All right. Before we start deliberating then, have you had any public comment on this?
We have not.
Okay. Okay, so the first question, the big question is demolition. How do we feel about the demolition?
Well, I'm still not quite sure, but just one comment about the first point in your comment is that you don't have any economic value in the property. And it says you bought it for $650, but you think now it's only valued at $250? Is that I don't know who the owner, I'm sorry, I don't. Yeah. You have to come up, sorry, yeah. Just trying to, if you value it at $650 and with all the stuff, or you value it at $250, it makes a difference in how you see the return is.
Yeah, Bob Lombardi. What other information do you need?
And your address, Mr. Lombardi?
I'm sorry?
Your address?
4912 Passaro Way, Dublin, 43017.
So just for me, as you look at your economic viability, and it was quite clear what you're saying, but you have a purchase price for $650, but you say the value's $250. Just trying to understand a bit how when you work the economics, if you value it at one versus the other, it makes a big difference on what you get returned.
The actual structure, which is approximately 5,000 square feet, that's it's not worth a whole lot. It's cinder block construction. It has a concrete slab floor, and it's sinking towards the east, which is causing a lot of issues with the building itself. So it's not, the materials of construction are, they're not good materials of construction. We have the roofs are both roofs are in terrible condition. The building is in terrible condition. And I built it with the idea, I bought it with the idea of improving that lot, improving that area. Being a longtime resident of Dublin, I'd like to see something that is is an improvement for the area. If you look at all the lots in that area, there's high density. I mean, there's very few with parking lots. Very few spaces. Most of the lots are built out. It's basically a residential area to the east. So I think, the plan would be to have the residences in the back and the mixed use up front. Hopefully like a very nice restaurant. And then there'd be retail and possibly an office or art gallery upstairs. Those are the thoughts.
Okay. So for you, your original return is more speculative from the.
I'm sorry, what?
Your original 650 was more speculative of how you were going to use the property in the future.
Yeah. But when you look at all the other properties, and then you look at that property, 1960, it's cinder block construction with a concrete slab we don't know where the sewer lines are. There's no information on it. I understand the historic value of the wall and the privy. And so we're willing to work with the city and incorporate that into our design. And we're trying to, you can kind of speak to the front of the building as it faces High Street, has the characteristics of the existing building. So, I think it'll be a sharp building. It'll really be, nice, complement the other structures such as the co-hatch that recently was built. That's just kind of what we're.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't have questions. Do you want us just to talk about this?
Unless, Mike?
Yeah, now you purchased this in like 2014?
2014.
Okay.
Right.
So what has your intent or changed over the years of what your initial intentions were to do with this property? Or I know it's been about 7 years.
Yeah, originally we looked at building a much larger structure there. But that doesn't seem like it's going to be feasible. So we've scaled it back to, make it more acceptable to the ARB.
Okay.
And the city of Dublin.
And your tenants that are currently in there, I think there was a comment that there's an intent that they may stay, or?
I've talked to the tenants, and the art gallery is interested in possibly moving out for a year and then moving back in during the construction period. And that's also been offered to the salon.
Okay. Yeah, just considering that hardship during demolition and all that.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Thanks.
Go ahead, Amy. Yeah, we might as well start deliberating.
So as far as do I support demolition, my answer is I don't know yet. You'd have to bring more information. Just because, you obviously bought this as an investment property and you're never going to make money off of it if you just have your existing building. But that in itself isn't enough economic reason to demolish those buildings. So I support the adding something to the property. I support the townhomes in the back or something like that. What I need is more evidence that you can't make your existing building worthwhile. You can't somehow transform that existing building into the restaurant that you want and could get revenue from that restaurant. Plus, you would have the revenue from the townhomes that you're going to build. And to me, it's just that you don't have enough justification alone on the building. You clearly bought this with the intention that you were going to put something else here. So I would have to see, like this scenario of keeping the existing building and adding to the property. That would be an economic situation that would also help support demolition. We have very specific demolition criteria, which you can work with staff for, but purely economic isn't justifiable according to our code.
Can I add to something to that conversation? I think that's a great point. So, from what we see is that the existing building, obviously built in the 60s, it's not really well perceived, I believe, as a commercial structure. The main reason is because if you look at the existing building, the ceiling height of the building is barely 8 foot. So if you know anything about the commercial spaces, that the requirement for HVAC and for all the things that needs to be make a commercial space actually operative is you have to be at least, a 12-foot ceiling. And then on top of that, you have, a couple feet for mechanical equipment. I mean, that would be the ideal, obviously. So we look at it, it's like, well, we can't just raise the roof, obviously, in this whole thing, you would completely change the character of the structure. The structure is just designed in a very minimal and a way that does not really anticipate, let's just say, the modern use of what is needed for a restaurant, as simple as a restaurant use for that space.
And that's perfect. That's what you need to bring to us. Bring to us, like, it would, it's not feasible to turn it into a restaurant. It doesn't meet current building codes, and it would cost $250,000 to meet current building codes.
Right, exactly.
Bring us that information when you bring the demolition permit.
Okay.
That's the kind of justification. We need to, you need to show us that.
I want to read to you the two sections right out of the code and I have the same reservations right now. And it says, and this is for building that's identified as a contributing structure that you want to tear down, will all, not just restaurant, all economically viable use of property be deprived without approval of demolition. So that's the one condition. So it's a pretty broad statement there. And then the second one is, will reasonable investment-backed expectations of the property owner can be maintained without approval of demolition. Now, that's kind of closer to what you submitted today, but I think Sean's question about the starting point is someone appraised the building? Those values that you're using, I think we would need more documentation to even consider that second criteria. And some of the other ones, like economic hardship exacerbated by the building owner, that one is pretty clear. You've attempted to resolve the structural issue in the back. That one we don't even consider. But I think the code is really clear on what the standards are. And so it's just going to be, now this is speaking specifically to the demolition. But I think you're just going to have to do more legwork before we can approve it.
Can you repeat on the third one that you talk about the structure?
Well, it doesn't apply to you.
Okay.
It says, was the economic hardship exacerbated by the building owner?
No.
And so that means, and essentially we're talking about, did you not maintain it? Did you intentionally do things to actually contribute to the devaluation of the property?
Which you clearly showed in your stuff that you haven't. You've been repairing it and.
Yeah, the fact that you tried to repair the back.
Yeah.
So
that would be my
What about the
expectation.
condition of the wall and the steps by the privy and so forth? The wall's falling down. And in fact, my neighbor, the dentist to the north, called me just the other day. I need to talk to him. Dr. LaPierre, I believe his name is. And that's on our property. I mean, it's going to fall. So with this, I mean, we're interested in improving what's there, and it would be basically rebuilding, or how would you describe it? We would keep the wall and fix it, I guess. So.
Yeah, I mean, there are different part of the structural issue that we are still dealing with. Obviously, we talk about the wall that is sharing between the next door neighbors. That wall, have its own problem because it's so tall itself. It has such a big drop, and you guys probably heard another case a few months ago about that property. But then we have multiple walls actually cutting through the middle of our property. And one of those that actually is really close to the southeast corner of our building that was being really pushed out literally by the settling of the existing structure that we try to, obviously our owners try to repair it, but then it's not working. And that's just worrisome.
And that would be a part of, if those costs are that would be one of the things that you would provide. Because it's clear you have to do both the stone retaining wall, which doesn't function as a stone retaining wall, as you've alluded to, and the block wall as well. And you can't fix one without fixing the other. So, but those are part of the, now, when I went and looked at the building, I kind of said, yeah, old buildings, you deal with things like this. To me, that alone was not grounds for demolition. Okay, because if you're going to bring it up to new use, a different use, you're going to have some work anyways. But that's clearly a part of your narrative and your story and the rationale that we need to see to approve the demolition.
In regards to the wall, as you probably, watched the meeting about the neighbor to the north. We had an extensive, very long discussions about that wall. And you can see where we landed, and you're kind of in the same exact situation. So at least from my standpoint, my comments are exactly the same as that meeting. You know, and I think we landed with them as, yes, it needs rehabilitated. But I certainly support you keeping the wall, rehabilitating it as needed. And it's probably not practical it doesn't work as, he said, a retaining wall. And we had that discussion with the neighbor that it might be that you put a real retaining wall behind it as part of your new construction or something. So I would urge you to watch that meeting and talk to staff about that, because I think at least three of us. Marty, were you here on that? So 4 of us were here then for that discussion.
Marty, Michael, do you have, just talking about the demo right now, do you have any things to add?
Actually, I did have a question that I would like you to focus on when you come back with the demonstration on this corner you talked about. And maybe, Chase, you can put the picture back up, that southeast corner. You know, is that, because you've talked about keeping the north wall intact and the privy, but in the southeast corner, you're saying that's where it's failing and the building is slumping a little bit. So I don't know if I can, there you go, here to the left. So my question really was for either staff or the owner, is all of this brick, all of this wall here and that little door with the signage on it, the compressor for the air conditioners on top, is that all historic wall as well? See in the middle picture here, Chase, of the slide you have up, the west view, looking from Blacksmith Lane?
Yeah, so, and can you repeat the question?
Well, I think all of this appears to be part of that historic, or could be part of that historic wall. And that's my question is any part of this being maintained, or will it be part of the demolition? Because what you're saying is that this corner over here on the southwest or on the southeast corner is failing. There's not a picture of that, and I'm looking to see if I have one, actually.
Yeah, I think Chase had another picture of that.
Looking from the south.
Yeah, I'm under the impression the whole wall, it's one consecutive wall. That's all historic.
That's what I'm asking is there a way to, if we could go back even to that last picture, because we've already determined that the wall to the north, one more. Yeah, so the wall here on the north, the steps, the privy, and all the way down to the east is all historic. But my question really had to do more with what's over here to the south of, the southeast.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, to be honest, the wall looks to me that they're built not at the same time. They're slightly different technique. But if you look at this picture itself, obviously you can see the foreground have the privy there, that the full height wall. But then as you go towards the building, it actually split into 2 steps. And then the stones are actually different, even though they're all stone. The bottom part have much bigger stone at the bottom of that. So it's like a 2-step thing and then they form that little platform with the condensing unit that you talk about. And then when you pass this part, and then it's split again. That if you go back to the site plan, actually, the conceptual site plan, you'll see that the two wall that I'm talking about, that they split up, like right there. If you can zoom into that corner on the southeast corner, you can see that one of them just kind of stop at the edge of our property line, and then the other one, closer to the building, actually extend past the property line and then wrap around to the south of the building. And that's the part, the one that closest to the building is the one that is falling apart, that we can tell because of the settling of that corner. So it's very complicated, but we're not trying to remove them or demolish them. So that's the main thing. We try to repair them as much as we can, obviously, with the new building, hopefully.
So I think we've all given you some input on the demolition. We're not opposed to it if you can meet the standards of the code.
Okay.
And I think there's some examples we had the one down on Riverview. There's a couple examples from a few meetings ago that staff might be able to help you about how they laid out the structure of why it was not economically viable. It's the double by the river. So there's a few, I think staff can give you a few examples of what we looked at last time.
Okay.
But really trying to think outside the box of why you can't use that space and have good backup for that. And then for me, we could.
Right.
Yeah, we can certainly provide those examples. Yep.
So you're saying that the main consideration of demolition is really mostly on the economic side. Is it? Is true?
Only because it's different because this is a contributing structure.
Right.
Okay? So it's the only way we can rationalize taking down a contributing structure is on the economic side. Okay, and that's what drives it. It's not, we can't talk. I know you look at the building and you say, is this a great example of what style? And I understand that rationale, but that's not the, well, depending on your point of view, that's not the way our code's written. So, but yeah, I know the argument you can make about.
I know, I mean, the sensible way to look at it, obviously we know that it's not really the most bona fide representation of the historic district, but I understand your point.
Yep.
Yeah, and the reason
So to be clear, and kind of add on to that, so the city would rather have what it has now, 10 years from now, a gravel parking lot and a block cinder building versus an improvement.
Well, part of your argument, one of the criteria is that you're bettering the neighborhood. Right. So that what you plan to do is part of it. That is part of it.
But clearly, I think the city council and the code has said, we want to try to keep contributing structures as much as we can, unless these, unless these 4 plus, a few extras are met. And then it moves forward. So I think, like you say, city council wants us to make sure that you are looking at all the opportunities. And if those don't exist, then we can help you try to find what that next thing would be. So, but I think clearly, yeah, the city is asking you to do that first.
Yeah, because I mean, to follow up, like Bob was saying, obviously I believe it would be reasonable to argue that one of the considerations also what are we replacing this with, right? And which is what we're going to talk about. But I think that would be part of that conversation, right? About, okay, we are trying to improve what is there, and we try to, obviously be sensitive about what we're replacing and create, to maintain the scale and the textures and everything.
And that's why we don't approve a demolition without knowing what's going to go there in its place.
Right.
That's why they're tied together.
Exactly.
So what
That's
you
why we
are
present
building
to you. Yeah,
does
that's
make
why we
a
present
difference.
to you the proposal in a kind of a conceptual way.
I guess the conclusion is we can't answer the yes or no to if we would approve the demolition. We can't answer that tonight on the information you provided. You have to give us a little more, and staff can help you figure out what that little more is that you need.
So really, the information you're looking for, though, just to be clear, is we don't need to go to any more sketches, drawings, and so forth. It's more the economic hardship.
Yes.
We're going to respond, let me interject. We're going to respond to whether you need more sketches here in a moment. Yep. Because we're going to talk about the appropriate, that's our second question here. So, just
We're just talking about demolition right now.
Okay, we're just talking demo. We don't want to go the next step.
But in your documents, things like tax revenue are not issues for this group. So that, even though you had that in there, we can't,
I know.
you don't need to,
Helps build these beautiful places, though.
we have a certain mission, we didn't establish
I
it.
understand.
We're just following what we're told.
No.
Okay, do we want to talk about if we would be able to support demolition, are we supportive of this redevelopment? Mass and scale?
In my opinion, a two-story building is going to be too high. I mean, you've got one-story buildings across the street and to either side of you. You might be able to get away with 1.5, but 2 stories with a front gabled roof, that's a lot of height. I know we had a while back, the dentist wanted to put a 2nd story on, but he kept a pretty low ceiling and it was a flat roof. And to me, that was okay. To me, it's an overall look of how high it looks compared to adjacent buildings. And the way he made it look, he fit his 2 stories in and it looked low enough. I just think this design with 2 stories and a front gable and a 2-story porch is just too large. It's not anywhere near the existing character or the neighboring character of the things on either side.
And I agree with that as well. Now, the back property, the back buildings.
Totally fine with 2 stories on the back.
Could take 2 stories in
The
the back.
townhome, I'm okay with the height and massing on that. But I'm talking the one on High Street is just too tall.
All right. I may be the dissenting opinion, but I think the porch in the front helps break the scale down. So that makes the building, and I think, I'm not trying to create work, but I think a document of the streetscape, because that porch works really well with those 2 little gables on either side. And so it breaks the mass. The 2 little gables are the building that was here earlier with the fairy garden in between. So I think that works really well with the scale of those gables and helps break down the mass. I actually think, based on what we saw from the dentist's office, that this may be the direction that parts of the street go. And I would just say, let's see the streetscape view of that side, because I'm not as, some of the issues I have are about a little of the detailing, but that'll come later. But I'm not as opposed to, the height of it. But I think a streetscape study would help us see.
Yeah.
And I think I wish we had a way of plugging in, talk to the dentist, put his proposal in there, and let's see how it looks and how things mesh together, because Brazen Head's on the other side.
No.
So you're beginning to get this mass of about that height and that scale along the street.
Going north.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we also have 2-story on the other side, closer to Bridge, Street, and across the street
Across the
also.
street,
Like
yeah.
all the recently built project is 2-story. So, I think it's pretty reasonable to expect it to. Now, and on top of that, actually, what we don't show, because we need to show the building, is that there are 2 gigantic mature trees right in front of our building. Actually, I don't think we have any picture to show that, that you can barely see the building, to be honest, when you're just looking at it from the front. I mean, there are two giant trees right in front of our building. And so I thought that, for me, you can't really see it from across the street, but then what you can see when you walk down the street, obviously. And that's why we want to create those porches and break up the massing a little bit to make it kind of more to the scale of the pedestrian, obviously with the signage and everything coming down from there. So that's kind of the intention of what we're trying to achieve, to create a slightly better.
For me, I'm a bit more with Gary. I mean, I think 2 stories. I mean, okay, we have to see how tall it really is, and I agree. We have to make sure it somehow fits in the structure, but I do see from High Street, Bridge Street coming up, I mean, they're low, and we start to approach them going higher as we go north. So I see some scale that direction, but sensitivity to the one to the south, I think 28, and because there are in the dentist on the other side, so we got to find a way. I think at the end of the day, it has to look like it it has to look somehow like it fits in there, but I think to Gary's point.
Yeah, I'm not saying,
eventually-
I'm not against 2 stories. To me, it's the overall
Yeah.
height look compared to, we don't want to look like there's a story and a half higher than the building to the south.
So it could be the gable, it could be just how the roof line fits, just a few things to look at how it integrates better as we're moving north, and the scales is getting bigger as we go north, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But we don't want to have the one of them just pop out of the middle of nowhere as it goes up. So it would have to, as Amy said, somehow we have to look at it from the massing and what the roof line looks like and what the setback is.
So what about the impact of those mature trees onto that porch, second level porch?
Yeah, those trees would be in your way. You'd have to trim those trees.
Well, now the porch is set back though.
Yeah, the porch setback.
Porch
Is it
is
set
We're
back?
gonna set the building back some,
Oh, okay, you're moving it back a little bit?
yeah.
Maybe a little bit on that edge, but it's not gonna be a whole lot.
I thought you were, well,
I mean, that would be also, 'cause down there, you have a streetscape where the buildings all have kind of the same frontage, so we definitely, at least I wouldn't support you moving it back significantly.
Absolutely.
well, we want a patio out there, so I'm not sure exactly what the,
Right, so we are setting back the restaurant side, the patio side, to create that patio coming back out, obviously. And then on the north side, that stayed where it is now, basically, where that block that you see that kind of sticking out is actually what it is now, the footprint of the building. So,
So 36 would be set back a little bit, but 38 would remain.
yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've addressed,
Townhomes, do we need to talk anything?
I'm fine with the general massing idea of the townhomes. They're down at that level, the 2 stories is okay. Just don't come and ask us for a 3rd story by putting parking underneath.
and I think having the big void in the corners makes those less massive, because we don't know yet what's going to happen on the other side. But that big void in the corner of each of those helps break that down a little bit, considering how small the things.
Big void, which corner?
Well, if you look at there's a balcony on the 2nd floor.
Ah, yeah.
And it's
Okay.
like it's
Yep.
carved,
Yep.
it's a section of the volume's carved out.
Only, yeah, because the balcony's only on one part of it in the front.
Okay, Chase, what are the other questions? I know you've been,
Mixed use.
are we all comfortable with the site layout?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that you're retaining, though, you're designing something around that wall. One off again.
Parking plan, we would be approving a waiver. Everybody comfortable with that?
We'll have to look a little bit more, because certainly, I mean, we approved some waivers that were where there were restaurants and a few things. So
Yeah.
you're starting to have uses that are daytime uses.
It would depend what it was. My biggest concern, just as you're looking at parking, try to find a place for delivery truck. I get so frustrated because all of our delivery trucks stop right on High Street and block the traffic, and you have to go in the oncoming lane to get around them. So if we are building new things, please build in new loading zones and new parking for deliveries somehow.
we already planned on that. Green Hill.
I would just, as far as site layout, just consider how it might be possible to deliver things to the back and not on High Street, right in the smack middle of rush hour traffic.
Yeah, we talked about that on Wing Hill Lane, we could offload, because I've
Yeah.
seen those trucks right in the middle of.
Yeah, they all do. And in front of our new development, they do it. In front of the old existing and at Domino, I mean, they do. And I just ask that you consider that. Otherwise, I'm fine with a parking waiver. Realistically, I would say get to the minimum number or try to get to the smaller end. I think it was 9 to
9, I
something.
think it was 9 or 11 or something.
Obviously, if it's a restaurant, you're going to have way more than 9 people using that. But you're very close to the parking garages and
Somehow making
other
sure you have
things.
enough for the residents, right? So they're not parking over at the library and need to walk home. So somehow we just figure out how we do that in a good way. But we've given variance.
And that was a comment I wanted to make as well, is that to be sure that you have designated parking for your residences.
And it wasn't that down on the north end at the base there, I think.
There are 2 spots noted on the north, but, yeah, I don't know, 2.
And to
For
be clear,
1,600 square feet, that's probably not enough.
so to be clear too, the minimum as proposed, the minimum number of parking spaces that would be required, should the entirety of the first floor be office, and then the 2 residential units would be 20 spaces. So that's kind of the bare minimum as proposed currently. That does change if a portion of the first floor is restaurant, because it requires much more. So that number jumps to 38. So essentially, if they were to get all of their required parking on the site, it would be a minimum of 20 spaces as proposed.
Which I don't think you're going to be able to do. I don't think you could fit that many spaces on there. But at a minimum, you're going to have to get your handicap parking, accessibility parking, your resident parking, and please a loading area.
Are we supportive of the conceptual architectural character? Maybe a little early to comment on that, but we do have some drawings, so I think some feedback they'd probably appreciate.
Again, to me, it's an overall height look thing, so it's hard to comment now on your architecture, because if you have to redesign your pitch of your roof and stuff, it changes everything, so I think it's kind of early. My thing is, don't make a fake old building. I mean, it's going to be a new building. I mean, obviously, we don't want a modern building. We need to use the materials that the historic district uses. I like the use of stone. I think that's great. But yeah, I don't want to comment too much because I think you're going to have to redesign it a little bit as far as height-wise.
It'd be nice, like you said, to get a streetscape and just kind of take a look at how that fits with the 2 adjoining properties. That may give you an idea of what to do on the exterior.
Yeah, my reaction is just, the building to the left right now, without any detail, just seems potentially like a little Spartan for the area. Like Cohatch, you at least have the battens that begin to create a rhythm and provide some detail along there. So just, and I know this is down the road, but I think probably, even when you look at the library, it's pretty visually tactile. I mean, it's not just a white box that has no detail to it. So I think there needs to be, hopefully that'll come. So that's my only comment. But I'm okay with the massing. I like the idea of flipping the materials from front to back, flipping them diagonally. And to go along with Amy's comment is our code is written, though, so if you use traditional materials, we kind of want you to use them in what looks like a traditional way. So, so when you do that cutout, sometimes you'll see people take cultured stone up across a big opening, which is not the way stone would be used. That's not a traditional way to use stone. So just, I know you're trying to make it somewhat stripped down, but just try to use the material like the material would be used. So those are my only comments.
For me, I'd say the same. I like, if that's going to be stone, it looks good for me, but otherwise, and I actually like the porch too, so I like how that lays out to the street, but as Namie says, I think you have to come back with a different look and see what it looks like, with a little more detail, what you think it's going to be.
I also like the mixed materials and the porch. I'm not sure about the balcony, but the porch idea I do like. I guess I'll have to see how the drawings come with the balcony. Are you planning to use mixed materials on the residential structures as well? I see in this picture here, and I don't remember there being stone on the flip.
Yes, it's a flip, so the stone.
It is stone, they're flipped. Okay, that's what I didn't remember from the drawings, so.
I mean, I love the all stone. I just think it should look more like an all stone cottage, like a story and a half versus 2 full. This looks like, just a little too big of a commercial building, like what we have historically at the corners of the intersection. And just historically, we had smaller little cottages. So I would just try to make it a little bit smaller.
Historically, we were all smaller too, right?
Do you have any other questions for us?
So I think my question would be, so obviously this is a very rough conceptual quote unquote sketch, even though it's obviously generated by computer. But the next time when we come back, are you expecting to see something a little bit more substantial and let's say more defined, let's say, in terms of the drawings and the...
Because that would be when we discuss the demolition, and you're talking about when you come back for us to consider and vote on the demolition. What review would that be in? Would that be in the minor project?
So this being a commercial property in the historic district, it's subject to, in the scope of the project, it's subject to a 3-step process. So concept plan, preliminary development plan, and then final development plan. So likely, and please, Zach, correct me if I'm wrong, the demolition would likely come with the concept plan.
So we probably need a little bit more detail. Now, what we've done in the past, and we may have done this with Cohatch, where we gave a tentative approval but said these are the items we're not comfortable with yet. So, but I think you probably need a little bit more development of the structure, since our approval is going to be based on what the changes are going to look like.
I think my suggestion would be is the overall look, like of the height, the overall massing and look of it is what's going to be most important. Like, we don't need the details of all the stuff you're doing inside, and we don't need every finishing detail. It's more of the overall massing and look, like what we would approve that part. And so then, if you decide to change it, as long as that overall massing and height and the dimensions, the site layout, that's the stuff you can't change. You can tweak where the windows are, the doors, or the types of materials. That stuff changes later as you get more detail.
I see. But how it looks against the buildings beside it?
Yeah, the streetscape overall look.
How's that dimensionally, if you're kind of looking at it, how's that 28, the smaller building, look against your building versus the dentist building? And does it stand out, or does it somehow look like it's transitioning? That would be helpful. I think Amy said, don't need every detail, but that's certainly
Enough so you know where your footprint lies, your height and your footprint, because you certainly wouldn't want to come back and be like, oh, we just realized this building runs right into the wall we said we were keeping. So you have to do enough to know that.
Gotcha. What were your comments in regard to working in concert with the dentist? I wasn't sure if I understood.
Make sure, I would recommend you go listen to the conceptual plan, go out and work with staff and get the conceptual plans that he had. Find out if he's, thinks he's moving forward with those, or if that's even in consideration anymore.
What he did with the wall.
What he did with the wall, the whole discussion of we had with the wall, you can hear, that way you'll get an idea of where we were on his concept plan that he brought, the comments that he got as far as height. But Gary was suggesting that maybe you even superimpose. We had 2 houses on South High Street. We kind of did the same thing. There was a house coming up at the same time, and we superimposed their plan next to the other plan, so you could see where they were in height-wise.
They have front elevation studies. So the question we have about the streetscape, if you put their proposed front elevation for the second story on top of their building, then that may help you guide decisions you make. It will also help us see if it's too tall, if we need to reduce things. But specifically, that's what I was talking about. I think to add to what Amy's saying, you may want to, if he's going to deal with the wall, and he's got an engineering consultants, they've got pricing, you may want to talk to him about that too. And maybe it works.
I owe him a phone call on that, but yeah.
I'd suggest you look for our hearing that we had where it's on YouTube, and I would go back and look at that and play it, because we did have a lot of comments to him about the wall and the need to protect it, and that will certainly apply to you as well, we even had asked him during that meeting about who owned that wall and who owned the privy and so forth, so.
So can we assume that, when we come back next time, obviously we'll provide more information on the demo side, on the economic side of that, and then at the same time, we are also providing more, information on the massing and the building heights and shapes and things like that, so that you guys can make that decision to vote on the actual thing next time.
Yeah, and I would run everything by the staff, because they're going to review it, they're going to write a report. There may be a recommendation in that report. So if you're not sure you have adequate information, because I think, and I want to summarize the things we went over, so it's a little bit easier when you read through the documentation. We're open to the demolition if you can meet the standards in the code. And so there's going to be more financial information that needs to be provided. We're open to the way that you're proposing to redevelop the site if the demolition's approved. Just some reservations about the height at the front. That's something we need to explore further. The site layout, people are comfortable with as long as you can accommodate, I think loading was an important one, and just the requirements for handicap parking. The parking plan, we're comfortable with and consistent with what we've done other places. We would support a waiver for the parking reduction. And the conceptual architectural character, I think we just feel like we need more information on that. So that's generally something.
And as far as the townhome, I mean, from the little you gave us on the concept of the townhomes, I was okay with those. So.
There's just one little detail, and maybe it's too early to talk about, but I heard about the mentioning about the 8A parking space, and we probably need to work with the engineering department a little bit. And we have worked with some other project that is not in Dublin, but in a similar situation where even if you provide a handicap parking in this particular lot, there's no handicap access that can actually go into the building from here, from the parking. So the best bet is that we should have a space in front of the building that people can actually get out and be able to get into the building. So I just want to make sure, I want to bring that up.
Yeah, which that would be something, I mean, you have to work with the city because we don't, I'd say, yeah, we don't have, our parking, on-street parking isn't handicap, like, it's not ADA compliant on street parking. There's not enough door swing or able to get a chair around or anything, so.
Right.
And the curbs, obviously, you have the curbs there that you wouldn't have ADA. So, yeah, you definitely have to.
Okay.
Yeah, you would definitely, you have some engineering struggles as far as ADA compliance on this site.
Unless we take out the wall and then we can put a ramp there, but I don't think we're doing that. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Anything else we can provide you? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Sarah, Chase, Zach, anything else for us tonight?
I have nothing to report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Motion to adjourn? All right. All right, so moved.
Put in a lift by the stairs.